How's everyone doing? I think I'm between you and lunch, so I think that's probably good because you go to sleep right after lunch. So I make whatever kind of clickbaity title, more buzzwords won't help. And then the subtitle was The Long History of DevOps Failures, which DevOps is something I feel somewhat credible speaking about for whatever reason. We'll talk about that. But you could actually replace this with pretty much any buzzword. It's the long history of failures for whatever your favorite buzzword is. So if you want to substitute microservices, continuous delivery, observability, like you can pretty much do that throughout the talk. And then I'm going to actually get into the real history of sociotechnical systems. So we're going to see a little bit of that, and it should be fun. Dramatic reading from papers that are older than me. But first, when I talk about failure, I think there's two different types of failure that are worth kind of noting. So one is the failure in an organization to get the results that they hope to get with their investment. And then I think there's another kind of macro failure where the movement or the kind of buzzword itself didn't accomplish some of the things that it wanted to. In the moment and across time, there's different kinds of failures at those scales. And this is one of my favorite sayings. Does anyone ever study physics? So does anyone know what Planck's constant is? So there's this period in physics where essentially everyone thinks that all we need is more precision and Newtonian mechanics all the way to the bottom. Like we got it all figured out. We're just going to get more and more precise and we're going to figure it out. And they start measuring this stuff and it gets to expose these anomalies about how the fabric of reality actually works. But it turns out that you can't just show up with data and say, like, this is the way it is, here's the stuff we can't explain. Because the people who build their careers on the old paradigm will basically not allow the new paradigm to come in. Like birthing new scientific paradigms is a messy process. And so this guy, Planck's principle is that science advances one funeral at a time. That the new ideas don't come and have the gravity of their own weight and merit, but that the people who would benefit from the old order slowly phase out, and the people who understand the reality of the new paradigm are the ones that are in charge. So for every complex problem, there's an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. Another great quote. And then I'm going to try to bring this back at the very, very end, but there's this story about scurvy, which is a disease that you get if you don't get any vitamin C, because vitamin C is critical for basically collagen, which is what stitches your whole body together. And there's evidence that citrus, it was basically written down with experiments and it was shown that citrus will prevent scurvy, but it didn't really get implemented for over 100 years on some of the ships. So this is kind of like an interesting, there's a few different versions and people debate some of the accuracy of it for like all the timeline and all the actors. But for a long stretch of time, there's this thing that exists that you can point to that says, if you eat citrus fruit, you won't get scurvy. And then it takes a long time before people stop having scurvy on ships. And then this other thing we'll bring back a little bit. And this is just kind of representative of, at least for me, when I see stuff like this, I wonder what these people knew. Like, I feel like they knew something, right? To be able to build these kind of things, these artifacts that stand as a testament to some knowledge, some understanding. So I'm going to introduce myself. So this is a little bit of a story that some of you might have suffered through before. We'll do this short version. So this is me. I spent the last, we'll say, 20 years working on open source automation, cloud automation projects, from Puppet to OpenStack to Cloud Foundry to Kubernetes. I wrote some books, I did some conferences and had a good time doing all that. Made a little bit of money, it was really great. DevOps was great for my bank account. And I just started this new company, Ergonautic, so we're gonna have some adventures. If you like some of the stuff I talked about today, happy to come talk about it more. And then I come in various configurations of hair and beard, which is critical for the next time you see me, because I probably won't look the same. I live in Arizona. Twitter used to be a thing that I liked. I don't even know what to do with it now. But yeah, so here's a bunch of representative configurations of hair and beard. So next time, don't be afraid. It's the same monster. So moving on from that, I invented DevOps. Yay! This is embarrassing. Because sometimes people actually say that or introduce me like that, and I'm like, I did not invent DevOps. I stole it. So I was very lucky with some of their friends and some of my kind of personal choices and circumstances to watch a bunch of things happen in a bunch of places, and I put together like my own version of that, and I was, I don't know, loud and obnoxious in the right place at the right time for people to say, oh, here's this guy that said these things. So this advice, this is one of the actionable bits of advice from today. The good DevOps copy stuff, but great DevOps steal. So wherever you can find a lesson, you should use it. And over time, I think it's funny because there's all these conversations about DevOps isn't defined enough. DevOps, if it was only better defined, then like we'd be able to do it better. And then the marketing people ruined it or whatever. And then the SRE book comes along and it's like all very, very, very detailed. And everyone's like, yeah, we're SREs. Okay, well, do you have SLOs? No. Do you do PRRs? No. Okay, well, what do you actually do? Well, we're just like sysadmins before, but now we have a new title. So it's like, okay, I don't believe you. I don't believe that definition will help you. But this is mine. So for me, and this is going to be a recurring theme, this like a social technical system stuff, optimizing the human experience and performance of operating software and with humans. So it's just the extension of software is eating the world. We're going to use software to make software, to operate software, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't really want a new word. Like when DevOps started being a word, what I was talking about at the time, and what became kind of like the primordial DevOps conversations, was agile infrastructure. So my comeuppance, whatever, is really focus on software engineering, and I wanted to do agile stuff, and not like Scrum stand-up stuff, but like XP, by the book, CI, and I was very frustrated working for a startup that they had an e-commerce platform, and I kept having to stay up, or worse, going to bed and then finding out at 6 a.m. when the East Coast couldn't do any transactions that we broke the system, right? So the differences between development, testing, and production, I wanted to make that reproducible, build from source, extend to my infrastructure. Because I got into this mindset where I believed in the religion that if you can kind of like TDD stuff, then you have more confidence, and I just wanted to extend that into my infrastructure. So now, we're against buzzword, but we need all of them, right? So this is what we're trying to do right now. This is what we've been trying to do for a while. Continuously DevOps microserverless. They'll fix everything with software and with humans. This is how I feel. Listen to a lot of people talk about DevOps or write blog posts about stuff. And then now there's this new wave of stuff about how DevOps is dead, which is pretty funny since it dies every year for the last like 10 years. It's usually set up as sort of like the straw man argument about you build it, you run it, which is a quote from 2006, which is 3 years before DevOps was a word, but whatever. We'll come back to that. So my personal ideas about DevOps, Agile, whatever, were deeply influenced by this guy, W. Edward Deming. And this is a quote from a book that Deming wrote. It says, one gets a good rating for fighting a fire. The result is visible, can be quantified. If you do it right the first time, you're invisible. You satisfied the requirements, that is your job, mess it up, and correct it later, you become a hero. And that's a very good talk that was given at a DevOps Days in 2010. And then I watched that same talk again at the SRECon in last October. So it's like the same ideas kind of built on top of each other about hero culture and quality. It's like the principles are eternal. So during the Second World War, Deming worked as a quality expert in armament plants throughout the United States. And he did a bunch of work. And his approach, the quality process that he implemented based on statistics and metrics, all this stuff, and coordinating across the workflows, helped produce higher quality products, raise the productivity, and lower the cost. Like demonstrable, data-driven thing, okay? And that was an approach where he was thinking about it as a system, right? So it's a system, and he's trying to improve it. He's measuring. He's trying to define the process, describe the process, and make it better. Like, let's make it better. And then the war ended, And then all the soldiers came back from the war, and they're like, that's fine when the women are running the factory, but we're not doing that. So he had all the data, but no one would listen to Deming in the US. And we'll come back to that. So that might have been the end of it. Meanwhile, in the 1950s, British coal mines. So this is where the term sociotechnical first comes into the lexicon. This is the research that comes in. So there's this guy, Trist. He's at the Tavistock Institute, and he's studying coal mining. And at this time in the 50s, what's happening, so there's this industrialization and investment in automation in the coal mines. And the heavily automated coal mines are seeing lower productivity, lower safety, and lower morale. And Tavistock, or Trist, is studying these kind of methodologies, and he makes a few observations, some of which might sound similar to others. So I'm just going to do a dramatic reading. I probably won't read all of it. I have a bunch of it. So I just want you to understand, like, this is the 1950s, right? So this is like 70 years ago. This is before I was born, and I'm old. The work organization of the new seam was to us a novel phenomena consisting of a set of relatively autonomous groups interchanging roles and shifts and regulating their affairs with a minimum of supervision. Cooperation between task groups was everywhere in evidence. Personal commitment was obvious. Absenteeism low. Accidents infrequent. Productivity high. Like, it's the stuff. This is the stuff right there. And this is from another paragraph a little later. The organizational model that fused Weber's description of bureaucracy with Frederick Taylor's concept of scientific management had become pervasive. The Haymore innovation showed us there was an alternative. So right now, I don't know who you listen to, but if you go listen to enough people, you're going to hear people say, like, Taylorism's bad. This is Taylorism's bad in 1950, right? So the sociotechnical systems theory, kind of the defining quality of it, is that an organizational system can only be understood and improved if the social and technical are both considered as independent parts of a single system. That if you just focus on the technology, then you won't get a good outcome, or as good of outcome as you could, if you accommodate and think about the social side of it too. And they have to be in balance, and if you go read the literature, you're gonna run into this word joint optimization, or this phrase joint optimization all the time about how you have to have this balance between the social system and the technical system. So some of the principles involved were as follows. Again, this is the stuff from the 50s. The work system, which comprised a set of activities that made up a functioning whole, now became the basic unit rather than the single jobs into which it was decomposable. So it's a cross-functional team. Correspondingly, the work group became central rather than the individual job holder. So it's about that work being produced by the unit of people, not each person doing their job. Internal regulation of the system by the group was thus rendered possible because the external regulation, rather than the external regulation by individuals, by supervisors. So we don't need managers. We're going to be this autonomous self thing. Yeah. Has anyone ever heard anything like that in any of these kind of conferences in the last, and we treat it like it's new, right? The design principle based on the redundancy of functions rather than the redundancy of parts characterized the underlying organizational philosophy that tended to develop multiple skills in the individual and immensely increase the response repertoire of the group. So this is, again, this is echoes of all this stuff that I hear people saying about software development right now. The full stack developer, being able to do all these things across the different things. So this principle values the discretionary rather than the described part of work roles. There's a longer rant I won't give today about how every organization is held together by people who do things that aren't their job. Whether you're going to the fast food restaurant or the most technical organization you can imagine, if everyone just did their job, everything will fall apart. Guaranteed. So it treats the individual as complementary to the machine rather than an extension of it. And last, it was variety increasing for both the individual and the organization rather than variety decreasing in the bureaucratic mode. So you're trying to help these people be able to do more things as people. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but. So this is basically Trist, after the fact, lamenting the idea that, like, once you've seen this, like, you can't go back, right? The idea of these separate approaches to social and technical systems would no longer suffice for one such as myself who had experienced the profound consequences, right? So he's seen this thing, and he has all the data. It shows that it's better productivity, better safety, better morale. And then what happens? Oh, this is a good one. So this, again, I don't necessarily need to read all these. You can read them yourselves. But this is the old paradigm, which sounds suspiciously like how a lot of enterprises work now. And then this is the new paradigm, which sounds like what everyone's trying to say from DevOps days going back 10 years, whatever, 20 years almost now, 15 years. So the technological imperative, like we're going to be better technologists. The new paradigm is that joint optimization. Man, also we'll forgive them for their gender language or whatever. This is a different time. So man is an extension of the machine. Man is a complement to the machine. Man is an expendable spare part. Man is a resource to be developed, and on and on and on. And then last but not least, low risk taking, innovation, what everyone seems to want, right? That's what everyone says, innovation. I have another rant that innovation is not what you need. You need the most obvious solution to your most obvious problem, but we'll come back to that in another talk. So the interest in the Haymart, so we have all this data, we're seeing this new paradigm, like what do you think is going to happen, right? Everyone's going to just go adopt this. Like we have the data, we did the work, like it's going to change coal mining. We got this, we're going to do this better, right? That's what's going to happen. It's obvious. So that's not what happened. So right here in the middle, we have this report that shows all this stuff is better, and the divisional board, however, did not wish attention drawn to it. They feared the power change that would be consequent on allowing groups to become more autonomous at a time when they themselves were intent on intensifying managerial controls in order to accelerate the full mechanization of the mines. So the data shows that this full mechanization is lower productivity, lower safety, lower morale. But they're like, that's what we're doing. So then this goes even farther, and they have reached the whole organizational level. Our research through the efforts show that this is better. It gets to the divisional chairman, and he's like, yeah, we're not doing that. And then the end is the sad part. The union regionally negotiated special pay for operators of the new equipment, so that if you use that new tool, you get like better pay. This broke up the unity of the face groups, which were further decimated when bonuses were introduced for various classes of workers. Within a year or two, the conventional system reinstated itself. Yay. And then a report was submitted to the National Coal Board. The results were not disputed. No one questioned the data. But the board's priorities were elsewhere. And then you kind of can skip to the middle right here. It says they stopped. They basically buried it because the energy markets were shifting to oil. And so the argument's like, oh, that's for oil, or that's for coal. But like now there's going to be oil, so like we don't need to worry about that. So sad. And then here's another thing I think is interesting, because you see all these people trying to do like autonomous groups and all this, and it doesn't always work out. I don't know if you ever been a new manager and you thought, I'm going to make everyone empowered, and then they all panic. I tried that before. So autonomous groups do not always succeed. A good deal has been known about the condition affecting their success or failure. These will not be reviewed here, except to note that one of the most common reasons for failure is lack of support in the surrounding organizational milieu. Anyone ever seen that? So this is just on and on and on, the same kind of stuff. So very early that they showed that the evidence is there, but the joint optimization involves different principles from following the technological imperative. So if you don't recognize the social system, it's hard to go back and kind of like redo it after you've already tried to mechanize everything. And I just feel like when you read papers like this, it reminds me of like, they knew something, and then we just didn't get it. So now we're going back to Deming. So the primary reason we know of Deming is because he went to Japan. So he goes to Japan, who's just been bombed and has to rebuild all this stuff. And he goes there in the 50s. No one really knows about him until the 80s. So there's a documentary that's made with this title. You can actually go watch the whole thing on YouTube. If Japan can, why can't we? And Deming says, and there's a quote here, I think that people here expect miracles. American management thinks they can just copy from Japan, but they don't know what to copy. And I think that sort of mirrors a lot of what I see organizations trying to copy, like Fang or whatever. Someone gave a conference talk. This guy was ignored. No one knew about him till the 80s, comes back. And if you don't have Deming, you don't have Toyota, you don't have Lean. Like all this stuff people talk about Lean came really from him. So when American executives visited these Japanese factories, They thought the Japanese were lying. They thought they were hiding the truth because they really couldn't believe that they were capable of this just-in-time manufacturing, which to them probably sounded similar to a conference talk when someone said, I deploy 10 times a day. It's like, there's no way you do that. It's irresponsible. Like, they thought they were hiding inventory because they couldn't conceive of a world where there wasn't inventory for them to run the way they ran in the US. So when they see the factories, they see the robots, and they know they're taking the market. Like, they see the numbers, and they see their cars on the road, but they don't believe they're doing this thing. So what does the American auto industry do? They see what Japan's been doing. They don't believe what Japan tells them they're doing. And they decide to invest in automation. So this is the headline from this article, which we can go dig up. I'll send you a link if you want. GM's decline truly began with its quest to turn people into machines. And the punchline is really at the middle. So they spent all this money on automation, trying to make their factories automated. And they spent $45 billion. And $45 billion in 1980 is a lot more than this today. Still a lot for a lot of things. So they spent $45 billion. Despite that spending, its global market share rose by but a single percentage point to 22%. For the same amount of money, we could buy Toyota and Nissan outright, said the executive, which would have instantly bumped GM's market share to 40%. So go buy that tool. It's going to be fine. And I'm just going to dig in a little bit more to the GM stuff. So quality suffered because instead of making flawless cars, workers simply did their assigned jobs. Workers had no big picture goal of building cars together to motivate them. So if you understand Toyota production system, one of the things that everyone has, at least in the version, the fantasy version that you get from the book, is they can stop the line, which was unthinkable in the American formulation of this, because it's like, we got to be productive, anything that's idle is waste. But in the bigger picture that Japan had, everyone understood it as part of a system. The goal is not to do my job. My goal is not to do my job. My goal is to make sure that the car that gets built is high quality, right? It's not just my job, it's everyone's job to deliver these high quality cars. So focusing on the technical without accounting for the socio never goes very well. Has anyone doing this? Anyone ever seen this? All you do is automate confusion. And I got in a lot of, over time my own understanding evolved, right? Because I used to be, automate all the things, yay, we're gonna do this, and then you do that a few times and you realize all you did was automate all the bad stuff, right? Like we just made it. What we really need to do is think about why we do things. And what we really need to do is take advantage of, and then that's before you get to the architectures themselves and the way that the humans interact with those architectures have implications, and that if you automate something that wasn't designed to be automated, who deals with things that are legacy systems that are a lot older than like 10 years, 20 years, right? So like when you go try to automate those with the new tools, you're gonna have an extra bad time. And it's worth revisiting the architecture as much as it is trying to automate it. And I think this is a paper that should be required reading for anyone who wants to work on computers. Has anyone ever read Ironies of Automation or seen this? You see it thrown around in a lot of DevOps conferences, or if you follow John Allspaw, you'll probably see, like it's mean time to the Ironies of Automation as a metric. But there's a paper that walks through, and I can't remember the exact date, but it's like 80 something. But it walks through how when you automate things, it doesn't mean that you need less humans, or maybe you need less humans for this certain thing, but if humans are not involved, if there's no human factors, then the failure modes are bad, right? So there's a bunch of things about automating aircraft navigation, automating these factories, and it's not that you can't get more from the machines, it's that if you don't have some understanding when those abstractions have got so far away from the reality and there's some underlying assumption about the abstraction that's broken, then the humans have a very hard time dealing with that. And there's a bunch of great examples of that. So the more advanced a control system is, the more crucial may be the contribution of the human operator. So that's a direct quote from the paper. The more advanced our automation gets, the more critical the socio side will be. And we'll see how ChatGPT does over the next. We're going to have like chat violence coming out of this pretty soon, but it's fine. So despite anyone's hopes to the contrary, like I think that at a high level, there's people who believe or hope that we could just, we'll automate it, the machines will do it, and we won't have to pay people, right? Because if you go down this rabbit hole too deep, you start critiquing capitalism, but we're not going to do that today. But we're going to get to this. So this is what everyone wants. So if this was easy, everyone would be good at it right now, right? If DevOps was easy, whatever it was, buzzword, right? So SRE, platform engineering, it's like all the same stuff. So everyone wants DevOps. Here's what most organizations want. What they really want. What they really, really want. Reliability. Availability. Scalability. Operability. Usability. Observability. And probably some more illities and yitties. All for free. Without changing anything. And then just to make that point, I just like to make the text really big. That's what most organizations want. Another thing you have to be careful of as you're engineering your socio-technical system is that performance almost always goes down before going back up. And you have this little J-curve of change is hard problem that you have to solve. So that you initiate some change, that you have a certain level of performance, and there's people that will initially resist that for whatever reason, whatever their incentives are. And then if you don't have enough kind of inertia and support to get over that bump and back to their side, then you can end up with that being used against the change initiative, and it will eradicate any of the hope that you thought you were going to have with the change, right? So you have this lack of commitment to change. Teams are not given time to integrate the new process or technology. You didn't invest enough in the socio side so that the new teams can use the tool that you got. But what you want to get to is high performing, and hopefully you're kind of like always going up, but this is the reality of change. And it's easy to see this as an individual. If you want to learn a new skill, you want to be better at shooting foul shots, you want to be better at playing a musical instrument, you want to be better at chess. When you try new things, you tend to go down. Your performance goes down. And organizations, for whatever reason, don't always accommodate that political reality. And then another thing that you see, and there's more research, but I don't need to read more research papers for you, about this kind of force for how organizations come to look like each other, or how we like copy each other's practices. And this used to really frustrate me in the early days, doing kind of like agile stuff before it was DevOps, and then DevOps again, and now watching whatever the buzzword is. That you see this tendency to take the vocabulary and change nothing else. And for a while that frustrated me, but when you get into the literature, you understand a little bit more about why that happens. And the best explanation, or the simple version that I'm going to give you today, is that in the innovation and the early adopters, their motivation is the advantage. They're seeking an advantage. So they're trying to win some game that they're playing. They understand the game they're playing, and they go make the moves that they believe with their model will improve it. And what happens then is you get the door metrics, or you get something that legitimizes that practice. And then as it moves into, maybe the front lip of the early majority has a little bit of an advantage-seeking tendency, but definitely by the time you get to the middle of this and the late majority, they're organizationally seeking legitimacy, right? So they want to use the vocabulary because that's what the cool kids are doing. That's what was legitimized by these metrics. And that's what we want to be the cool kids too, even though, we're not. So the words cross the chasm before the understanding and the practices. And I think you can see this waves of this. If you've been involved in software, agile, whatever, going back, there's lots of organizations you show up and you're like, oh, we're doing agile. Okay. Oh, we're doing DevOps. All right. It's like, why are you so bad at software then? Like literally, you're terrible at software. Well, like, oh, well, we have stand-ups and we stopped writing documentation. Okay. Cool. Did you do CI? No, of course not. That would be hard. Testing's hard. So new words cross because they're new, right? So there's a certain thing that makes us excited about new things, right? Like the analysts need new words, even though it's the old thing, even though it goes back to Trist in the 50s. It's the same principles. We gotta have like this new word to put on the hype cycle. And what you see over and over is tech is more about fashion than it is about merit, right? Like whatever's the cool thing, like we gotta do that. It's a bad idea. The other thing that happens, which is depending on your perspective, good and bad, is we need to fund a new initiative, and so we need a new word because the old word already failed, right? Like we had an agile transformation, then we had a DevOps transformation, and we gotta have some word because we know that other thing that we already did didn't work. And then also tribalism, because we gotta other each other. It's fun. And relate to that as the org chart. So people need funding an org chart. This is something I say all the time. If you show me your org chart and your funding model, I'll predict everything that's hard for you right now. So it's the new words, but it's still the same system, and then people are shocked that they have the same outcomes. So very few organizations are actively optimizing their process. And I like to think of that process as not to compare myself to Deming, but it's like you have this thing, we can start to think about it, measure it, and it's about your context. It's not about copying someone else's process. And this is related to someone that was asking questions. Charity is very few individuals are empowered to really change your process. In fact, if you try to change your process in a lot of places, you're gonna have a bad time. And yeah, ask me how I know. So the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now. Forgo legitimacy. Seek advantage. That's my advice to you. Change your organization or change your organization. It's easy, right? Especially now that everyone's laid off. So we can't just copy. We can't copy the Netflix, all these other things, right? We can't do that. I mean, we can. It just won't be good because we don't have the same preconditions they do, and we don't have the same winning conditions that they do. And we don't know what to copy. So when organizations copy, they usually copy the most superficial thing, right? So people try to copy Amazon's, API, but who's tried to copy Amazon's writing culture? Who's tried to copy like all these other things that they do organizationally? So this is a hard problem. It was hard for Deming, and it was hard for Trist. They had all this data. They were empowered and given this thing and actually produced results. And then people didn't listen to them. So don't feel bad if they don't listen to you, right? Or me. So parting thoughts, hard problems are made hard. This isn't a technical problem. This isn't a people problem. We have to solve both these things as a single system together. Don't give up. So I saw that picture, it's funny. A bad system will beat a good person every time. It is not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory. Another 50-year-old quote. So thanks. This is me, Andrew, Ergonautic. We focus on trying to help people build their people, practices, and platforms. And I give you permission to learn anything from anyone. And I think we have about 15 minutes left for questions.